SPC 205. Whatever time you're consuming this little piece of academic media, I am once again your public speaking instructor, Vic McInnes, coming to you live on tape from my COVID-19 compound here in the ever expanding Grovetown, Georgia metro area. The Aiken Outpost in the lovely Columbia County, Georgia. Hey, today's lecture is brought to you by Sweatpants, endorsed by 9 out of 10 college instructors still teaching from home. Sweatpants. Hey, listen, big announcement, big, so big you can't get it on the screen announcement. Next week, instructors have been asked to start doing 1 day a week on campus at Aiken Tech. So starting next Tuesday, which is October the 13th, I will be on campus basically from 9 to 3 every Tuesday. For a great number of you, you don't care. I get it. You can talk to me by email. You can do Zoom. That's fine. But for those of you who don't like email, also not too thrilled with Zoom, if you do like having face-to-face contact with your instructors, I will be on campus. Now, there is no way for me to make my office safe during the pandemic for us to have a meeting. We're not going to be able to social distance. There's no ventilation in there. You know, I was having to be on campus last week and I stuck my head in my office, and I can promise you there is no ventilation in that room. A little funky. So if you want to come meet with me face-to-face and have a face-to-face encounter, you're going to need to set up an appointment between Tuesday 9:30 to 2:30. That'll give me a chance to get in, get my computer turned on, and then we can, on the front end and on the back end, 2:30 will give us enough of a chance to have a conversation and be done by 3 when I'm supposed to be off campus. I can't do any more days than that. I can only do the 1 day. I could break it into 2 separate, but basically it's only 6 to 8 hours a week I'm supposed to be on campus. I will put out a formal notice about this, but you are going to have to set up an appointment because I am not going to have meetings in my office. Okay, we will meet in one of the classrooms. When you set up the appointment, I will tell you which one it is. Okay, but again, I will put out a more formal announcement on that later on this week. There's a couple of other things I want to get out in a Blackboard announcement, and all of that will be coming next week. Okay, all right. See, I got a new ring light. You can see it in my glasses very well. I got that from Jeff Bezos at Amazon. So we're going to jump right into today's lecture, which is on organization of your speeches. Now, we've talked about, and I've said in the lectures on multiple occasions that we don't talk in front of people. We have to have ideas organized, because I've also said this to you guys, I think, a couple of times. We don't have the opportunity during a speech to go back and reread the speech. If you lose people, you are going to lose them, and they are not going to catch back up. So we have to have our speeches very explicitly organized. We are going to do things like say, hey, my first main point, my second main point, my third main point. We're going to lead them through our organization so that they can follow us more clearly. Now, you've got to work on the assumption that when you're doing a speech, people aren't going to be taking notes. You're going to have to aid them in their memory in every way they can. And if you go way back and you jump in the Wayback Machine, you will see that I mentioned early on that organization improves retention. Okay, we also put that organization and good delivery are maximum. Okay, but you need good organization. And so what we're going to be talking about today is organizing your speech. The first thing we're going to do is come up with some models for organization, and I'm going to give you some examples. We're just going to talk about some methods of organization, how you might, rather than just throwing stuff out there and saying, my first main point, and it's totally unrelated to your second main point. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some organizational methods and just to sort of set you up. The first one is chronological. Now, chronological, Spindrift. Water with raspberry. Okay, chronological is simply doing something in time order from beginning to end, first to last. Okay, it's real simple. You talk about the first thing first, you talk about the second thing second, you talk about the last thing last. Okay, well, I just said that. So it works well with two types of speeches. First of all, historic facts that need to be in chronological order, like the road to the Civil War. Almost every history lecture you've got is based on chronological, and they tell you in 1858, when they walk you through the steps. Okay? And that's pretty obvious that that's time order, historic facts, but one of the things you may not think about is like how to change a tire. A process where it's very important to go from the beginning of the sequence all the way through to the end of the sequence. So if I'm talking to you about how to change a tire, the first thing I'm not going to tell you is take all the lug nuts off. That is dangerous. Okay, the first thing I might tell you to do is, and again, I usually use this as an example, is in classes, I say, okay, how would you tell somebody how to change a tire? And usually somebody yells out the first thing is, take the tire off. And I'm like going, wow, that's going to be a challenge without jacking the car up first. Because you're going to have 1,800 pounds of Toyota Prius sitting on a tire that you've taken all the lug nuts off. That's incredibly dangerous. Okay, so it's very important that when you're telling somebody how to change a tire, the first thing you do is to put some chocks under the wheels so that you're safe. Second thing you do is make sure you've got an inflated spare tire, you've got a jack, you've got a tire iron, you've got everything you need. Third thing you do is to jack the car up. Okay, actually, third thing you do is break the lug nuts, but don't take them off yet. And then you walk all the way through to the point where you're doing that star pattern on the wheel, tightening the lug nuts up. It's very important that you do these things. One of the people that was in a previous class was somebody who worked down at the Savannah River plant. And they mentioned the fact that there was a nuclear safety briefing, where it was very important that you go through all the steps. And the person who was doing the briefing did what I just did. Oh, wait, it says step 6, but really we're on step 7 because you forgot to put in this. And I'm like sitting there going, that was a nuclear safety briefing? They go, it's fine. We all know we all knew it. It was just a chance for this guy to practice. And I'm like going, why am I not going to sleep tonight? Okay. So if it's very important to go from first step to last step, chronological order is how you're going to do that. The next type is going to be topic order. Now, this is categories of a division of some sort of subject. Okay. And how you divide that division is really going to be up to you in a lot of ways, whatever works best. Okay? Some logical progression, least important to most important, biggest to smallest. Okay? Something that makes sense to where you can say, okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is the biggest portion of this. Then we're going to talk about the medium-sized part. Then we'll talk about the smallest issue with this. Good example would be Aiken Technical College. If you're talking about Aiken Technical College, divided up into our 5 major learning emphasis areas: general education, business and computer technology, health sciences, technical education, and online learning. Okay, those are the way that you would you could break that up. And then if you could add that we're going from our biggest student populations down to our smallest student populations, that would just aid in the organization. Okay. And I got a little scratchy throat today. I can still smell and taste, so I don't have the Rona, but I don't want to cough on you all the time. Okay, so topic order breaks things down into some naturally obvious division. Spatial pattern is how things are related to each other as they exist in physical space, how they are juxtaposed next to each other in physical space. Well, it's almost like I just said that. So top to bottom, side to side, front to back, any of those things that allow you to organize something as they exist in the physical world. So Aiken Tech, we could organize a talk on Aiken Tech spatially by starting up at the top of the hill and saying that's where we've got welding, and then working our way down, nursing and our technical and our medical education facility is over there. Then we've got, the library and the media center. Then we've got the 700-800 general education building. Then we have the 100-200 building where our English and math classes are. And then the administration down at the bottom, in the bottom floor of that. That is a spatial pattern, okay? You can also use it for pollution in the Mississippi River. Pollution in the northern Mississippi River up near Minneapolis, pollution in the central Mississippi River around St. Louis, and then pollution in the southern into the river and the delta down around New Orleans. Okay? So that's a spatial organization. Now, one of the things you can also use it for is for things of mechanical things, like when you're inspecting an object. Now, every time before I went overseas, I had to go through an anti-terrorism class, and they would teach us how to check our cars to see if they'd been tampered. And the way we did it, not just walk around the car and check this and that and the other. You would start at the front bumper, and you would examine the bumper, and then you would go to the grill, and you would examine the grill, and then you would go to the hood, and you would check the hood and make sure the hood was clear and nothing looked different. Then you would go to the right side front fender and wheel well. Then you would go to the left side front fender and wheel well. Then you would go to the left door and left window. Then you would check the windscreen. Then you would check the roof. Then you would go back around and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, all the while your eyes are focusing on the car. Then you would do the rear right side fender and wheel well. You'd go around the other side and do that, and you do it spatially, and then you do under the car. Okay, it works the same thing. And again, I've had a lot of guys that are like machinists. They're trained the same way, to where when you start with your machine, you start at the top before you turn it on. You start at the top and go through these processes and examine and make sure everything is good to go. Okay? Spatial pattern, how things are juxtaposed in physical space. Now, causal pattern is one that everybody loves and everybody uses a lot of. Causal pattern delineates a cause-effect pattern. Hey, listen, if you do this, this will happen. If you drink and drive, you will go to jail. Cause and effect. Okay? Or if you drink and drive, you will kill someone. All right? So that delineates a cause and effect. Now, a lot of times we use it as it is more effective to use it as effect and cause. And the reason we use effect and cause, because if I tell you what the problem is first, it has a greater impact. Okay? It gets the audience hooked into talking about the effect of, well, clearly that's a problem. So they want to know the cause, and if you're then following on with the solution, and we'll talk about that in just a second. If you're following on with a solution, then you've got them really intensely involved in it. So if you come out with a cause, and we'll look at a couple of examples here. Okay, American math scores are falling in relation to the rest of the world. That's the effect. That gets everybody's attention. Not being on a year-round schedule is the reason for that. Now, there's tons of studies out there that prove this. Any school system in the United States that's gone to year-round schooling has improved their math scores across the board. They also improve their English scores as well. But math is a skill that when you give kids 8 weeks off during the summer, that skill set really deteriorates. But if I came up and said, hey, listen, I want to talk about having year-round school schedules here in the United States, everybody's immediately going to go, I'm not listening to you now. I will go back to thinking about Oreos. I am now thinking about double stuffed Oreos. And I am not listening to you because I don't care about year-round schooling, because that sucks, because I love summer vacation. Okay? You put the cause up front and people get really bored. Okay? You put the effect up front. Hey, America's 17th internationally in math scores. We're lagging near the bottom of every industrialized country in the world. And the reason for that is we give our students 8 weeks every summer off where they do no math practice. So today we're going to talk about how bad our math scores are, and we're going to talk about a way to solve it by going to a year-round calendar. Well, suddenly you've got people, they know what the effect is. They know how we're being hurt as a country by not having year-round schooling, and that has a positive impact on the way they perceive your speech. Okay. Now, very similar to cause and effect, or causal pattern, is problem solution. And we're going to have a whole lecture on problem solution speeches in a couple of weeks when we get close to the problem solution speech. What I will tell you now is you have cause and effect, or effect and cause, but then you also have a solution, and the solution has two parts, and we're going to talk about all of that when the time comes. Okay. But problem solution is an organization, and we're going to talk about that later on in the class. There we go. Okay. And narrative order. Now, narrative order comes out of an idea called a narrative theory. And this doesn't necessarily replace any of the ones you've seen before. It just sort of may supplement it. You can do narrative order on its own. But narrative theory says that when we hear something that involves narrative, it involves conflict, it involves plot, it involves characters, it involves character development, we have a tendency to remember stories better than we do random facts. Okay, so if you can tell a story about somebody, you do better. That's why every Army training video, and if you ever were watching any military training films, they all feature Joe Tenpeg, U.S. soldier, because we can identify and relate to Private Tenpeg. He is a guy that we know. He's a guy we work with every day. And so we are more identified and we have more of an emotional stake in it. People remember stories better than they remember facts. You need to keep that in mind. You have characters, you have setting, you have plot. You use stories to illustrate, and stories can be real or they can be made up. Although ethically, if you're making up a story, make sure you tell your audience that this story is an example of what could happen to a Savannah River Plant employee named Bob Smith. Okay, well, I just said that without the typos. Okay? So once you've got all that done, okay, once you've got everything organized, you're going to start building your outlines. Okay? We walk me through the process, or walk with me through the process. Remember the first thing we talked about, one of the first things we talked about, how to pick your topic. Okay, you look at the speaker, the occasion, and the audience. We've talked about audience analysis. You've come up with 3 or 4 ideas you want to put in. You've decided what organizational method, chronological, spatial, causal pattern, narrative, you got all that down. Now it's time to start putting your ideas down on paper. And that's called outlining. Okay? Now, why do we outline? Well, there's a couple of very good reasons why we outline. First, it allows you to test the scope of your speech. If you're given a 4 to 6 minute speech like you are going to be, and you find out that, and you put it all down and you look at your outline and it's 5 pages long, the scope of your speech is too broad. You have to focus it and bring it down and narrow it. Okay? Does your speech attempt to cover too much information? Does it adhere to the purpose statement? Okay, a lot of times I will look at an outline and I will see a statement of purpose, and then I will look down and I will go, what does your third point have to do with this? And so here's something else you need to be aware of, cognizant of. A lot of times people who don't do good outlines, they will get up in front of the class and they will start speaking, and they will be talking about, and I'm looking through their outline, and they have completely left their topic. They have veered off into right field, and they're talking about stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with their topic. Why? Because we feel like we have to be talking, and we start bringing in ideas that are juxtaposed, but pretty soon you've gone from A to B to C to D to E to F, and you're way out on the other side of the street, not even talking about your topic anymore. Okay? So outlining allows you to make sure you are adhering to the purpose of your speech. It allows you to test the logical relationship of your main points. And again, you need to, when you're coming up with these, come up with a single principal development model of the ones we just talked: chronological, spatial, causal pattern, topical division. A lot of times I will see people that will start out, today I'm going to talk to you about the road to the Civil War in South Carolina, 1850, 1855, 1860, Charleston, Spartanburg, Greenboro. Okay, and they're jumping from chronological to spatial. Okay, it allows you to look at all your points and visualize your speech and begin to say, okay, that's a problem. Second of all, it allows you to test your supporting ideas. You will be citing, and it will be part of your grade to cite 3 points of evidence in your speech. And we're going to talk about evidence in a couple of weeks. Don't freak out. But if I look at your outline and you're going to identify all your evidence in red in your outline so that I can see it quickly and easily. If your first main point has all 3 pieces of evidence and your second and third main point have no evidentiary support, that's not good. You have to make sure that your evidence is spaced throughout your speech and evenly divided among all your main points. Okay? It also allows you to test the balance and proportionality of your speech. I get these outlines that say the introduction, then it has main point one, more main point one, more main point one, main point two, conclusion. Okay, they spent 3 pages developing main point one and less than an inch developing main point two. That's clearly a balance and proportionality issue. Okay, and my comeback to that is usually you need to break your first main point down into 3 main points, get rid of 2/3 of the rest of it, and focus on that for your speech. Okay, and then finally, it helps you develop your notes. Okay, it's very important that you have good notes. I think some of you have already experienced in your 2-minute speeches and in your ceremonial introductory speech. I've seen a lot of you have notes that you never even look at. Notes are going to be very important, and I'm going to show you some notes that I've used. For each of the following speeches, I'm going to show you for the informational, the problem solution, and for the persuasive speech, I'm going to do a speech. I will post the video link, and I will do that speech for you. And what that will allow you to do is to see a speech as one of these speeches that's a solid B plus, A minus, okay? But also for the first one, I'll show you what my notes look like. Your notes should be just waypoints, and we may talk about notes a little bit later on in more detail, okay? All right, so here's what your outline should look like. Number one, oh, don't forget this. Let me go back and do that again. I stepped all over it. Never write your outline out into full sentences, okay? You've heard me say over and over again, and we'll deal with this later on this week about you delivering the speech extemporaneously. You're communicating ideas. You're not communicating words. You're not communicating sentences or paragraphs. The minute you start writing your outline out in full sentences, you know what you're going to do? You're locking yourself into words, not ideas. And I can always tell when you've written your speech out and when you're reading your speech. Like I said, I've told you guys, I've been doing this now for a long time. Okay? I know when you're reading it because your sentence structure is different and your language is different when you're reading written language and when you're speaking orally. Okay? So don't try to sneak it by me. I know when you do that. And when you start writing on your outline in full sentences, you lock yourself into using those full sentences in your speech. Now, the textbook will tell you to write your outline out in full sentences. The textbook lied. Do not do that. Only use the words you need to indicate where your speech is and give the information you need. Okay? You are not, when I look at your outlines, and you're going to email them into me, and we're going to go over that whole process, probably first part of next week. I will make sure you understand what you need to do, and I am not grading you for grammar and punctuation. Okay? I need to be able to read it, but if you've got a misspelling or some grammar, or you should have subject-verb agreement because you're not going to be using sentences. Okay? So let's look at the basics of an outline. First thing you're always going to have is an introduction. Okay? First thing that goes into the speech. Everything else in this, to a great point, is going to be flexible as to how you do it. But I'm going to tell you this right now, and you need to remember it, and you need to stick with it. The very first part of your speech is always an attention device. Okay. An attention device is not, hey, good morning, my name's Bob. That is not an attention device. In fact, that is an anti-attention device. Let me explain that. Human beings have their own concerns. We're basic, selfish, narcissistic animals. Some of us are more obvious about it than others, but generally we're pretty self-interested. And when you walk into an auditorium, a classroom, a group, or anything else, and people are pretty much absorbed in their own lives, they really, yeah, sure, it's interesting to hear you speak, but that's not generally what they're going to be focused on. You'd have to do something to shift them from thinking about whatever they're thinking about to thinking about what you want them to think about, to get them to focus on you so they can hear what you're talking about. Now, an attention device does that. And what can you use for an attention device? Anything that does 2 things. 1 is related to your topic. 2 enhances your ethos or your credibility. Okay? You can tell a joke. You can read a provocative quote. You can tell a startling fact. Okay? But, and you can, and listen to me for this next part, you can ask a thought-provoking question, but we do not do that in my class, and here's why. The first semester, I had never seen it this bad. The first semester I taught at Aiken Tech, I said, you could ask a question. So for the informative speech, about half the class asked questions. And I was like getting a little frustrated with it. The second speech, the problem solution speech, about 2/3 of them asked. And then for their persuasive speech, the first speech was, and this is an exact quote. A student stood up and said, "What about rocks?" I was like, okay. So I have a rule now, because asking a rhetorical question or a thought-provoking question is easy. You will not start your speech with a question. If you start with a question, you will not get credit for having an attention device. If you start with, hey, good morning, how are you? My name is, you'll get to my name is in a minute. If you start with that, you're not going to get credit for that, because those are anti-attention devices. Now, a good attention device will get your audience focused on you in a matter of a couple of seconds. There's been plenty of studies that show what I call the anti-attention device, just something you say to make you feel more comfortable. Good morning. Actually causes your audience to remove their attention from you, because what it says is, this guy's got nothing interesting to say. I don't care. Okay? So again, understand now, attention device is going to be worth some points. You don't do a good attention device, you're going to lose points. Okay? I oftentimes, and I don't know if this is as effective, I haven't got any feedback. Used to be, I would say, what's the best attention device in the world? And by this time, the class is usually, at this point in the lecture, we're 45 minutes into it, and the class is kind of staring off into space. And I would go, the best attention device in the world is to just go, ah! And everybody starts screaming at me, and they get angry because I scared them. The problem is, if I go, ah! Today I would like to talk to you about the fish populations in the Clark Hill Reservoir. That doesn't pertain to my topic. That doesn't build my credibility. It just pisses the audience off really bad. Okay? Now, so I said, never start a speech with a scream as an attention device. Not all attention devices are good. Literally 3 days later, I had a student get up there and go, ah! That's the reaction I have when I see a really good horror movie. Today I'm going to be talking to you about horror movies. And I was like, okay, he wins. He got a great score. When you can take something I said and push it back at me, that's fantastic. But remember, your attention device has to be related to your topic, and it has to build your credibility. Now, it used to be they always said, get up and tell a joke. Get up and tell a joke. Jokes are okay, but really, very few people know how to tell a good joke. So I would say stick to a startling quote, a provocative statement. Every year in the United States, we kill 2 million dogs in our animal shelters. 2 million. Okay? That's got people crying. That's a good attention device. Can't use it in this because we're not talking about adopting pets in this class anymore. I've heard that speech too many times and they don't go well. Okay? All right, so the next 3 things I put in this order, and I'm going to recommend that you stay in this order. First of all is to come out with your statement of purpose. You guys have taken a English 101. You want to know about thesis statements. The statement of purpose is just like a thesis statement in a paper. Okay? Your speaker qualifications. Now, I know I'm sort of throwing you guys to the wolves and I want you to take on meaty topics. None of you have PhDs and everything. I don't want you to make anything up. But you need to tell the audience that this is something you care about and that you've been researching. So for our purposes, your speaker qualifications, if you have nothing else, you say, I've been researching this topic. Don't say for the last couple of days. Just say, I've done research on this topic. Okay? Everybody understand that? So your statement of purpose, your speaker qualifications, why we should listen to you, okay? And then you do your preview of your main points. Preview of your main points. That was a good example of articulation. In which case you say, I will be talking about this topic today through 3 main points, and you will tell us briefly what those main points are. Remember, we're building a structure for your audience to hang their memory on, okay? And by giving us those 3 main points, it helps us track where you're at in the speech. Here's why I tell you to do them in this order. You can move them around however you want. The attention device has got to go first. Statement of purpose, speaker qualifications, and preview of main points. 2, 3, and 4 can be mixed. But by keeping the statement of purpose and the preview of main points separate, you don't have a tendency to run them together. Okay? Because a lot of people will say, today I'm going to be talking to you about the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. My second main point is going to be, in which case you've merged the two. Your statement of purpose should be completely separate from your preview of your main points. So, this would be an introduction. Every year, fishing and recreational activities in the Clark Hill Reservoir brings in $78 million into the economy of the Central Savannah River area. Let me say that again. $78 million into the economy of the Central Savannah River area. Today I'm going to talk to you about one very vital component of that, the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. My name is Vic McInnes, and I've been studying and researching the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. And we're going to talk about that today through 3 main points. First main point is going to be we'll talk about the fish population survey that was done in 1988. Second thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the fish population survey that was done in 2015. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is the cause for that significant drop in the fish population in those 27 years. Okay? Everybody see how that works? Took about 30 seconds. If in a 4 to 6 minute speech you're spending more than 45 seconds on your introduction, you really need to rethink it and redo it because you're spending too much time. The purpose of the introduction is not to give your speech. It's to give everybody structure, to get people engaged in your speech, and then give people structure and to build your credibility. That's it. Quick, move through it very fast. You're going to have your main point number 1. And again, this is going to be very generic because I just want you to see what an outline looks like. And yes, I expect your outlines to have Roman numeral 1, capital A, capital B, capital C, capital D. Roman numeral 2, capital A would be your first subpoint. Capital B, your second subpoint. Roman numeral 3, main point number 2. And then Roman numeral 3, let's see if I need to go down one. Let's go back. Let's not go back that far. Too many subpoints on each of these. Okay. In these, you can see that I have the red asterisks, okay? The red dots indicate where I'm going to be using my evidence during this speech. And just by glancing at this, I now know that my speech is pretty well proportioned. My evidence is being used evenly across and throughout the speech. All of my main points are supported by evidence, okay? So I've tested that proportionality and I've tested the use of my supporting material. Then I'm going to go to my conclusion. Now, I will move through this. Once I get through my peer review, I'm going to discuss this through 3 main points. My first main point is going to be the 1998 Fish Population Survey of the Clark Hill Reservoir. My second main point is going to be the 2015 Fish Population Survey in Clark Hill Reservoir. And my third main point is going to be the cause of that significant and obvious drop in fish population during that 27-year period. So my first main point is the 1998 fish population survey. Support. Which brings me to my second main point, the 2015 fish population survey. Main point, subpoint, support with evidence. Which finally brings me to my third main point, what has caused the problems? Subpoint 1, subpoint 2, evidence. So, in conclusion, let me wrap this up. You give verbal and nonverbal cues that you're moving between your main points. You don't just go, I mean, I have one where In 1998, there was a fish population survey done that showed that there was 114,000 fish per cubic hectare. And they just, in 2015, and they just droned through the thing. You have to give your audience big points, indicators. First main point, second main point, third main point, to let them know that you're transitioning. And when you get to the end, you go, and in conclusion, because if they've slept through all of it, they now know that you're coming to the end, and they will pay attention to the last minute and a half. Okay? And it's okay for your conclusion to be a little bit longer. All right, so in your conclusion, again, this is kind of flexible on how you do this. There is a closing statement, which is clearly probably going to be the end. Okay, you restate your purpose, which is, again, a restatement of your statement. I'm pointing at my screen, which you can't see. The restatement of purpose is going to be a review of your statement of purpose. It can't even be the same thing word for word, but just put it in past tense. Statement of purpose. Today I will be talking to you about the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. Restatement of purpose. Today I have talked to you about the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. I've talked to you about three main points. The fish population survey of 1988, the fish population survey of 2015, and the cause for that precipitous drop in the fish population in Clark Hill Reservoir. Do not get drug into details on that. You're supposed to just refresh their memory and rebuild that structure so they have a place to hang all that information. And then finally, you're going to come out with a closing statement, okay? The closing statement is where you just give us something to wrap everything up, okay? You can go back and bring in something from your attention device. So my three main points were the 1998 fish population survey, the 2015 fish population survey, and why what caused a precipitous drop in the fish population. Now, we all know that $78 million are put into the local economy every year by recreational activities at Clark Hill Reservoir. So please, join me in paying attention to this problem, okay? There is some flexibility there. Are you going to restate your purpose or review your main points first? There's some flexibility there. There's even some circumstances where you're going to have a closing statement to just sort of start off your conclusion. That's possible. A lot of times, a lot of texts will not cause it a closing statement. They will cause it a summation, okay, or a summary statement, and that can go at the beginning of the conclusion. That's fine. I will tell you that this is the easiest way to do it, but it's not as immutable to be at the bottom as it is. The attention device has to be at the top, okay? I expect you guys took English 101. You deal with outlining in English 101. Yes, I expect your outlines to look like this. I will show you an example of an outline before yours is due. I did one outline, and I got a Band-Aid on my finger. I did one outline. My outlines, after doing this for a long, long time, decades, okay, my outlines, I don't normally do full formal outlines because once you've been doing this forever, you know, that's like when you learn how to drive, the hands are at 10 and 2. I think 9 and 3 now because of airbags. You know, my kids, when I was teaching them how to drive, was like, you tell me to drive at 10 and 2 and you've got your hand up here at 12. And I'm going like, I've been driving for 50 years. Well, 40 years. Okay. All right. So I did an outline that you will see for my informative speech, and you'll get to see what one of those looks like. And that's it. All right. Woohoo. And again, I will come out with an announcement once I get everything nailed down. You're going to turn in an outline to me a couple of days, probably 3 or 4 days before your speeches are due, so I can review them and get your feedback on your structure and your organization and everything else. And then you will turn in an outline with your speech. I will go over all of that. Pay attention because your outlines are worth 20 points, 60 points overall. That's a letter grade. Okay? And then also, if you don't turn in an outline, I'm not watching your speech. Let me stress that right now, because if you don't put forth the effort to put in an outline, you're not putting forth the effort to get a good speech. And I'm not going to open my class up to Lord only knows what you may be speaking about. Okay, so if you don't turn in an outline, you don't speak. But that's not a problem because you got to do an outline to give a good speech. It's that simple. Okay. Remember, if you want to meet with me on campus on Tuesday, starting next Tuesday, October the 13th, you have to set up an appointment between 9:30 and 2:30. I am still open to Zoom meetings, and of course, I always try to respond to your emails by the end of the close of business the next business day. So, without further ado, I will let you get back to your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day whenever you're consuming this little artifact of academic media. Hey, if you are watching it on the 5th of October, today is the last day to register to vote in Georgia. So if you want to vote this year and you haven't registered, get online and do it now. There's tons of websites out there that will help you with it, but register to vote. Okay, all right. Everybody stay safe, stay well, and we will see you soon.